Okay, so for this one, here's what we need to do next. So we need to get the air. Okay, we got it into the alveoli. Okay, you understand how the air gets into the alveoli. Okay, now we have to understand how it gets to the blood. Okay, so how does it cross into the blood and how is it carried in the blood? Okay, so this is the part where it gets a little tricky. So air. So we got to talk about what air is made up of. So you have to remember that air is not straight oxygen. It's a combination of nitrogen, oxygen, water vapor, and carbon dioxide. Okay, so it's got all those things in it. Okay, so it's a mixture of gases. Okay, now each gas contributes some pressure to the overall pressure of the air. Okay, now we mentioned this before, but at sea level, the pressure of the air is 1 atmosphere. Okay, and 1 atmosphere equals 760 millimeters of mercury. Okay, so we can figure out the partial pressure of each gas based on this 760. Okay, so nitrogen is 78.6% of the gas in the atmosphere. So its partial pressure is 78.6 times 760 millimeters of mercury. So we get that the partial pressure of nitrogen gas is 597 millimeters of mercury. Okay, and they symbolize partial pressure with this P in front of the gas. Okay, now you don't have to calculate it. I just want you to see where it's coming from. So the partial pressure of oxygen is 159, partial pressure of water vapor is 3.7, and the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 0.3. Okay, so these are the gases that make up air. Okay, so now if you sum all those numbers up, right, you're going to get 760. So you get the pressure at sea level. Okay, now here's another gas law. Okay, so Dalton's law says that the total pressure in a mixture of gases is equal to the sum of the individual partial pressures. So basically this. Okay, and you don't have to memorize Dalton. If you take chemistry, you will, but you don't have to memorize Dalton. Okay, now, what's in our lungs is a little bit different because we have more water in our lungs. Okay, so what's in our lungs, it's humidified. Okay, so some of the gases, exchange gases with blood, it mixes with the air that's in there. So the air that's actually in our lungs, which we're going to call it alveolar air, the partial pressure, so nitrogen is 569. We don't use nitrogen for anything, so we don't have to worry about it. Okay, oxygen is 104, water's 47, and carbon dioxide is 40. The two that we're going to be worried about are carbon dioxide and oxygen. That's all we really care about. Those are the big ones for us. Okay, now, we've talked about this before. Okay, so there is going to be, okay, so if I have my blue water going along, line in the alveoli. Okay, so that's alveoli, and it's got water in it. Okay, gases are going to diffuse down their concentration gradients, so we talked about that. So they move just like anything else. Okay, and you can think about a smell. So like if you smell cologne or something like that, the smell is going to diffuse down its concentration gradient. Okay, now Henry's law states that the amount of gas that dissolves in water is determined by how well it dissolves in water, its solubility in water, and its partial pressure in air. Okay, so it turns out that carbon dioxide is really, really soluble in water. Okay, so it's 20 times as soluble as oxygen. But oxygen in the air has a higher concentration gradient. So what's going to happen is the oxygen and the carbon dioxide will actually move at the same rate. So we'll have oxygen going Whoops. Did you see what I did? Erase that. Okay, so let's do the little eraser. Okay. So we'll have oxygen, right, going into the blood vessel. Okay, so into the capillary. Okay, and we're going to have carbon dioxide going out. Okay, and because of these kinds of things, okay, because of the solubility and the concentration gradient, they move equally. Okay, so they're going to move at the same rate. Okay, so the concentration alveolar air is going to be 104. Okay, CO2, I'll show you. Okay, so 46. I'm going to show you all these numbers in a slide in a couple minutes, so hang on. Okay, now, I just told you this, so this is on that other slide, so ignore that because that's a repeat. Okay, now, if we look here, okay, oxygen is 104. Okay, in the capillaries, it's going to be way less. Okay, so in the capillaries, and I can't remember the number. I'm having a brain fart. Let me look. In the capillaries, the oxygen is only going to be 40. Okay, so oxygen is going to move from where the pressure is 104 to where it's 40 until we get to equilibrium. Okay, and then we can go backwards. Okay, so CO2 is 46 in the blood. Okay, so in the blood. Okay, but out here it's 40. But carbon dioxide dissolves really well in this water, so it's easy for it to get across. So water's going to move that way. Okay, now, what affects gas exchange? Okay, the respiratory membrane, okay, this membrane has to be really, really thin. Okay, if there's something in there, like if somebody has pneumonia and this is full of fluid, that's going to slow the gas exchange down. Okay, now the membrane surface area matters. So that's how many alveoli you have. Okay, so if something happens and you're missing alveoli, so say you have a tumor and it takes out a bunch of alveoli, that's going to affect your gas exchange. Okay, now the last thing is ventilation perfusion coupling. And our lungs are kind of interesting because what happens is where we have good ventilation, okay, where there's lots of oxygen, we send lots of blood. And the opposite is true. So if the tissue's dying, we don't send blood there. So that's ventilation perfusion coupling. Okay, so here's what I was just trying to show you. And I hope you can see it. Okay, so pulmonary circulation, systemic circulation. So we're trying to get you to see, okay, part of it's going to happen in your lungs, right? That's where we're going to pick up oxygen, drop off CO2, okay, exhale CO2, and then down here in the tissue, okay, we're going to be taking oxygen, so we'll be picking up oxygen, picking up carbon dioxide in the blood and dropping off oxygen to the tissue. Okay, so here's the numbers. Okay, so PO2 in the lungs is 104. PO2 in the blood is only 40. So that means that the oxygen's going to go this way. Okay, carbon dioxide in the blood is 45, but in the lungs it's only 40. So that means carbon dioxide is going to go that way. Okay, then the blood's going to get to the tissue. Okay, at the tissue what you're going to find, okay, if the tissue's active, carbon dioxide will be about 45. Okay, but what it is over here is only 40. Okay, so carbon dioxide is going to go into the blood. Oxygen goes from 95, and this is 40, so it's going to go this way. Okay. Right, now here's some diseases that affect gas exchange. Okay, so normal, if you cut through alveoli, it looks like this. So lots of surface area. Okay, now, if somebody gets pneumonia, you get fluid buildup in there. Okay, so membrane thickness, so we're going to have less oxygen going in, and we're going to have more oxygen staying, more carbon dioxide staying in. Okay, so you can't get rid of the carbon dioxide. Okay, now emphysema, okay, what happens with it is the alveoli, instead of being a whole bunch of little grapes, what happens is the cells break down, and they call them confluent alveoli. So you're losing surface area. Okay, so that's going to reduce the amount of oxygen you can get into your blood, and it'll increase the amount of CO2 that stays in your blood. Okay.